22. Giles. Although their journey south from Trowsby proved uneventful, an unfamiliar sensation crept through Giles's gut as they approached the northern gate outside Warrington. He scanned in all directions, wondering whether he sensed danger, but when his gaze fell on the smooth, angular features of Amelia Horne's face, the sense became clearer. Impatience. How many times had he told Gemini to be still, to be patient? Yet here he was, fretting in much the same way his younger companion did. A certain measure of caution and a low profile were mandatory if he was going to complete his tasks, then arrive in time to meet Gemini and any Michonne he might have convinced to come to the Foundation. To see one of his own who trained to defend the Queen's forest as a burden was ludicrous. But to fear for her safety when mercenaries and soldiers alike would go to great lengths to claim the high bounty on his head? That was logical. Silence your mind and focus on the tasks at hand. Instead of feeling responsible for her and fearing for her safety, ensure she is prepared for what might come and be done with it.
"You nod as if we've spoken, Prince Renaud,"
Amelia said as they arrived in the queue lining up to the gate.
"I'll never get used to hearing someone call him that,"
Brugh chimed in. Giles staunched his telling nod, pushed out a breath he hadn't fully inhaled, and leaned toward the younger elf astride the 3/4 horse he'd purchased with a loan from Brugh in Trowsby. "If you continue to call me by my title, you will inevitably invite trouble." He lowered a hand to his abdomen to conceal it from onlookers and extended its finger in the direction of the queue ahead. Intrusive ears could cause turmoil you couldn't imagine if word got around of the company you keep today. You will remain silent unless spoken to until we have left Warrington. If you have such respect for the title, you will obey. It was a testament to her training that Amelia's facial muscles twitched only in the slightest before she dropped her chin to her chest in acquiescence. In a more robust show of discipline, she didn't acknowledge verbally at all. Giles turned his head away and huffed again. "Apologies, Amelia. I don't mean to be harsh." When she didn't answer, he turned his gaze. One blonde eyebrow arched high. "Speak."
"Thank you."
She gave another slight bow of her head.
"You'd already warned me, and I apologize for slipping again. In the event I should need to address you, and am given leave to do so, what shall I call you?"
Brugh, who rode on Giles's left, opposite Amelia, spoke in a mutter too low to hear, even though Giles's hearing was acute even for his race. Brugh was inviting him to ask that he repeat what he'd said so they could hear. The warrior played games like that, but Giles wasn't biting. Unfortunately, Amelia was.
"What did you say?"
"I said I prefer you call him arsehole."
Giles shook his head. "Are you sorry you asked?" Amelia's stoic features were left to the wind. Although she spoke in a whisper, her words came in chuckles.
"Speak of him in this manner a second time, and you will find an arrow in your temple."
Brugh laughed.
"Oh, I like this one, Sir Arsehole. Are there more like her back home? We could cast off this holy business and build quite the troop to entertain travellers on the roads north. Or we could head southwest for the mountains. I hear dwarves love snippy women."
Amelia grasped a dagger with ornate carvings on a twisted handle sheathed on her belt. Brugh's movements were a blur as his sword dislodged from the strap on his back and whipped across Giles's field of view so the tip pointed a foot from the center of Amelia's face. He, too, chuckled his words.
"If you're gonna face your betters, you'd better bring something bigger than that pest stabber to battle, little one."
The white tiger Giles straddled turned its head to face Brugh and sneered. A rumble vibrated through his lower body. Giles raised 2 fingers to the flat of the mammoth blade and gently parried it away. Brugh slapped it onto his back, then Amelia's hand dropped from her dagger with a few mutterings of her own.
"They should call you Brute."
Brugh coughed a laugh.
"Aye, that they should. And you'd do well to understand why."
Giles measured his tone and kept his eyes straight ahead. Aggression shrouded in humor. "You two certainly aren't boring, but that's enough." He counted himself lucky when they passed through the gate to the smaller town without incident, although Amelia received the typical second glances guards in this region lent attractive women. He might have flashed the main guard a warning look, but he didn't want to invite inspection via the man's interface, Because he couldn't be sure if word had passed south about the resurfacing of a fugitive wanted in the region for more than 3 decades. He had little doubt a few took second glances at his tiger, and the way the guards kept an extra foot or two distance aided in their speedy entry. Besides, if they were distracted by Amelia, they weren't inspecting him. An asset after all. We should avoid the main thoroughfare, Giles suggested once inside the town. Which way, brute? Amelia chuckled. Brugh pointed to the right. Then they turned that way, with the warrior in the lead and Amelia bringing up the rear. 2 women with baskets hung across their forearms skittered toward the wall as their procession passed. A man whose ragged clothes hung loosely on his shoulders with dirt streaked across his cheeks and forehead staggered by without noticing them. He belched loudly, bringing the tiger's head around. Amelia's voice came low.
Lovely.
Giles patted the animal on the haunches, then it seemed to calm, but it threw the occasional backward glance until the man was out of sight. A moment later, she urged the small horse to sidle up next to Giles. She lowered her chin and cocked her head to one side.
We have an admirer.
Behind and to the left? She nodded. Brugh turned left ahead of them. Giles snuck a peripheral look as he made the turn but spied no one. However, a direct glance revealed a low, hooded figure who walked hunched over. The thick knuckles of an arthritic hand clutched a walking cane. He halted his mount, then reached into his bag for a few coppers and held out one fist as if to drop them in the beggar's hand. The man stopped. His free hand threw back his hood and intelligent blue eyes peered up.
While I appreciate your generous nature, I'm not a beggar, sir.
Apologies. Giles pocketed the coppers, then shook his head at himself. Amelia chuckled.
Forgive me, my lord, but that has to be embarrassing.
He had to admit it was, but that didn't mean he'd admit it out loud. On the positive side, she'd stopped calling him her prince, even if she'd missed the fact that the title she used was a human one. The man nodded, raised his hood, and turned left.
You should not be on the street. My shop's rear door is at the end of the row on the left, but your companion knows this. I will meet you there.
Giles eyed the back of the stranger's low form, then turned to Brugh. Yup, that's him. The shop's dim interior bordered on uninviting, and Giles suspected that was a purposeful design choice. The man dropped the cane against the wall just inside and stood more erect as he led them through the rear hearth area than into the shop itself. He threw back his hood and gestured with both hands, as if to illustrate they stood in his home and business. The double doors were latched by a hooking lock from one latch to the other. It glowed red. The man who'd feigned being a cripple hunched only slightly as he sauntered over to a counter and leaned there. When he didn't speak, Brugh filled the silence. You knew we were coming?
Yes.
Giles nodded. I see. The university's warsagers learned to scrounge the ether for those they seek from the generation before them.
They bastardize our magic for an unfit monarch.
It only makes sense the Coven would have their own scryers, since you're the previous generation.
Coven?
Amelia asked. First things first. Giles gestured between Pronto and Brugh. The 2 of you have done business, so I assume introductions are unnecessary. Brugh nodded. I am Giles Renard. This is Amelia Horn. He bowed.
In honor, Prince Renard. I am Pronto.
He pushed off the counter.
I wasn't expecting the Lady Elf.
Nor was I. So if you knew we were coming, do you also know why?
You are bound to the Chenois. I assume your purpose is suited to his, so it is therefore suited to mine. How might I assist the mythic?
Amelia turned her head away and muttered.
That was easy.
He made a mental note that despite her conscientious response to his orders outside, the elven woman's discipline tended toward lapses. The clearing of his throat before he responded to Pronto would have to do as a reminder. The purpose is threefold. Pronto chuckled, pinched one of a few wiry hairs atop his head, then pulled it down so as to stare at it.
Solara's bidding is rarely simple. Forgive my impatience, but I must know. How fares the one you call Priya?
To you she would be Delphine. Pronto waved a dismissive hand.
No farther proof of your identity is required, Prince.
Understood, Master Pronto. Priya is one of the 3 reasons we've come. I fear she is struck by lycanthropy. Prantu shuddered.
What? How is that possible? I haven't heard of shifters in these lands.
Our foundation is located in southern Seran. The goddess presented a quest inside a cave there, and when the foursome entered, they were attacked by a shifter. Unfortunately, Priya was infected, and the effect persisted after the instance was completed.
Very strange. I might have a solution, but tell me the other 2 reasons.
There's a man called Mulk who has joined our companionship. He is from here.
Probert Mulk, yes.
Reading Giles's expression, he smiled. A tooth was missing near the corner of his lips.
It's a small town. You speak of his niece, Rovella. I'm afraid her father is the overly pious type who won't allow the dark magic that could cure her pox to be cast in his home, nor upon his daughter in any case.
I have a promise to keep. If he resists, I'm willing to disable him until the deed is done. So the only remaining question is, can you help? Prantu nodded.
You share a mythic's determination, I see.
Brug coughed laughter.
I assure you, Master Prantu, I need not to have met this mythic to know his persistence holds no weight against my elven friends.
Fair enough. And the 3rd objective?
To bring you and the Shadow Coven to our place in preparation for ultimate conflict with the King's Regent. Prantu leaned back against the counter. Giles nodded understanding. I'm sure it's a heavy request, and I understand the Coven has been in hiding for many years. It probably isn't easy to consider leaving your shop, but—
You jest.
I do not.
No, you misunderstand. If Solara has finally called me to a purpose, I will go. I knew when Gemini Fowler first stepped foot into Warrington that my day was coming.
He clicked his tongue several times.
And I speak for the Shadow Council when I tell you they've already made contact with Delphine, Priya.
I see I'm behind everyone else, Giles said. Brug threw up one shoulder, then dropped it.
How are they in contact?
Prantu chuckled.
Subtly. They're reminding her of her past in her sleep, but they will have difficulty traveling. If you want to reunite the members, there will be travel involved. Much travel.
Fine. Will you aid us in the other measures?
Yes.
Prantu stood, then clutched his robe at his narrow hips.
I'll need to gather my things.
He scanned the shop.
If I might be so bold, you should leave Warrington and let Brug and I tend to the girl. It was a mistake for you to come here, since they'll be looking for you.
How do you know?
I know everything that happens here. I also know of the blight outside your foundation, the governor's destruction of the former outpost to the north, and many other events that might surprise you. But these are tales better told on the trail. He snapped his fingers twice at Brug. You can disable the girl's father without permanent harm coming to him?
Brug threw Giles a look. The elf nodded.
Yeah, I can handle that.
Amelia leaned on a counter kitty-corner to Prantu's.
Of course he can. Brute can do anything.
Brug chuckled and winked.
I love a sharp tongue on a woman.
Amelia rolled her eyes.
What are you, 50?
I'm 64.
Amelia's spine straightened.
Oh.
Her fingers splayed on her chest.
But you're in reasonable condition anyway.
Your admiration honors me.
The tone in his reply lacked conviction. I can see the 2 of you are going to be stones in my boots until I've separated you. Best we make haste to the Queen's Forest before you kill each other.
Queen's... what did you say?
Prantu asked. Yes, we have to meet the mythic there before we proceed to the south. He has gone north for more reinforcements.
North of the thickets? How many in his party?
Just him. Prantu burst forward, and Giles caught himself before reaching for his daggers.
You sent the lone mythic in Enora, come to pave the way for his brethren in the goddess's holy name, to the north on his own? Are you mad?
Giles took a short step back to create a little distance. I sent him nowhere. Desinishare's people migrate with the seasons up there. He has gone to bring them back to what was their rightful home. It's how we found the place. The blight wouldn't allow for others to accompany him, and he wouldn't spare a horse for his own interests.
Ah, I see. I sense your frustration with him.
You sense the least of it, I assure you. Prantu chuckled.
He did seem a bit headstrong.
Giles moved on. Might Amelia and I wait here while you and Brug tend to the girl?
That would be fine. The Seekers will not find you here. My place is well protected. But I'm afraid Priya's condition is going to rely on finding a member of the council who can rid her of it. She will not be easy to find, if she still doesn't want to be found.
Who is she? Amelia asked.
She's the daughter of the one who recruited me into the coven. Her mother was Dahlia. Her name is Mizelle. She was raised across the sea in Lao. As far as I know, she's still there.
Across the sea? That's a long journey.
There's a portal used by envoys in the king's seat. Someone with your stealth abilities could use it to travel there. So you can go by sea or travel an equal distance by land, then slip into the portal. Your choice. Either way, I can tell you where to find her.
And if she's relocated? Giles asked.
Dahlia taught her too well. Mizelle will be quietly practicing the craft passed down by her mother. She knows one day we will come calling and liberate her, and she won't want to be noticed by the warlords in a place where magic users are severely restricted.
He waved a hand.
But we speak of tomorrow when my own liberation comes today. Remain here. If we're lucky, Molk's brother-in-law is still at the loom working. We could reach the girl and be gone before anyone notices.
Thank you.
Your gratitude is unnecessary when we serve the same purpose.
The mage raised a single finger.
I have one request.
Giles squinted. How might I serve?
Here it comes,
Amelia added. Pronto turned toward a closed door near a washing base.
Come out now. The way is clear.
The door popped open a couple inches and Giles spotted an eye in the shadows. The gap grew wider. Then finally a woman in a browned robe with sandy hair stood there.
Prince Giles, Renard, meet Archmage Mora. Like you, she is a target of the scryers at the university. She has decided to join the new iteration of our coven, but requires safe passage to your foundation, if you'd have her. I have altered her appearance and masked her essence using my spirit daily, but it will expire soon, and you will want to move with haste.
I'll speak with Gemini, but I'm sure he'll be amenable.
Gemini Fowler has invited you to join the clan, Solaris 7.
Speak of Holcrum and he will appear.